Okay, so good morning. We will be doing multiplying decimals. So this will be a little intro to the concept for today. For some of you, it will be review. For some of you, maybe it will refresh. And for some of you, this may be the first time that you're seeing it. So I'm going to just kind of walk you through the rules, walk you through a couple examples. You will need a piece of paper and a pencil. So something to write with and a pencil because I'm going to have you write down a couple examples and a few slides. And that's what you'll turn in for notes. So your rule. The rule for multiplication is you multiply like the decimals are not there. So this is a little bit different than adding and subtracting decimals because you do not need to line up the decimal. For this, all you do is you set up the problem and you ignore the decimals at first. And then at the end, you place the decimal back in the answer by counting the places from the original problem. And you'll see that worked out and you'll see what I mean in just a second. So you do not line up the decimal when you multiply. Kids get this confused, which is what makes decimals hard. So when you go to 7th grade, you need to know when you add and subtract, you line them up. When you multiply and then you add in the decimal at the end. So you're going to write this down. Example 1. So 2.3 times 6. Now what happens is you're going to multiply like normal. So right now I'm going to ignore the decimal, right? So I'm just going to do the math. So 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 2 is 12 plus the 1 is 13. Okay, so I get 138. Now what happens is in the original problem, there was one decimal place, and that one decimal place you need to know. So what happens is technically speaking on the number 138, or if it was 38 or it was 3, there's really a decimal that's right here that you don't see. We don't write it because we don't need it, because technically after this is a 0 and there's no reason to write it at the end. But what happens is when you're multiplying decimals, that place value needs to be accounted for. So that one place value needs to account for where you move the decimal at the end. So right now the decimal sits here and I need to move it over 1 to the left, right? So my decimal would go right there. So your final answer would be 13.8. So please write everything that I wrote down. That is what I want on your note page. And remember that you're not in the book, you're just on a piece of paper. All right, now you have a new example. So please write that down. 2.84 times 7. Now take note that there's 2 decimal places. So at the end, we will be moving the decimal 2 times. But for now, we're just going to worry about the math, right? So 4 times 7 is 28. And then you have 7 times 8 plus the 2. So that becomes 58. And then you have 7 times 2 plus 5, which is 19. So your answer is 19. Sorry, I'll write it right here. 1988. And remember I told you that the decimal technically is right there. Well, we needed to move 2 times because there's 2 places right there. So we would move it 1, 2 to the left. So your decimal now sits there. And you get 19.88. So that's what you should write down. Now you have your third example. Please write this down. So 2.1 times 0.5. Now this is a little bit different than the one before. And the reason is this time in your second number set, whatever you want to call it, there's a decimal where before it wasn't. But it really isn't any harder than the one before. Technically, this is 1 decimal place, 2 decimal place. So you would move the decimal 2 times at the end. So now I'm just going to do my math. So 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 2 is 10. And I get 105. Now I need to move my decimal over 2. So it needs to go 2. And I end up at 1.05. And that is how you solve that one. Now your last one, which is harder, and it's because now there's two numbers here, right? We're doing three numbers times two numbers, and as we know, that makes life a little bit difficult. It's doable, but it's not fun all the time, right? The other thing I want to point out is now you have one decimal place, two decimal place, three decimal place. Now keep in mind the 1 and the 9, those are whole numbers. You do not count those decimal places because those are whole numbers. They're not tenths, they're not hundredths, right? So that's why we focus so much on place value. So at this point, you would understand what's going on with the place value. So I will work this out. So I got 4 times 8, and that's 32. 8 times 3 plus 3 is 27. And then 8 times 1 plus 2 is 10. Sorry, I was looking at my notes. And then remember that you need to put your place value, your 0. Some elementary teachers, they have kids put an X. Whatever you do for yourself to hold that place value is fine with me. All right, so now I have 9 times 4, right? So that's going to be 36. So I'm going to use a new color because I don't want to be confusing. Okay, so 36, right? Now I'm doing the 9 times the 3 plus the 3. And I'm going to get, let's see, 30, right? And then 9 plus the 3 is going to be 12. Okay, so I'll switch to a new color. So now we add those, remember? So that's 2, that's 13, that's 1, and that's 3, right? No, that's a 2. Sorry. I'm not lined up like I should be. Okay, so I get 1, 2, 1, 3, 2. That's my final answer. And remember at the beginning I said, well, you have 3 decimal places. So remember the decimal sits right there. You're going to move it over 1, 2, 3 places. So your final answer should be, oh no, I was right here. This is a 3. I'm sorry. I'm looking at my notes and I was right. All right. So final answer, 113.132. So when you add them up, that's what you should get. Okay, so just remember, I have a little slide of the rules. When adding and subtracting decimals, that's when we line them up. When multiplying, we multiply like normal, and then we count our decimal places at the end. So join the meet, and we're going to start practicing this.